So before we begin today's worksheet on the five senses, let's just take a moment to get grounded and think about perhaps why it is that you chose this topic, what attracted you. And we'll set a little commitment here, an intention of sorts. As we move through this worksheet, make a commitment to notice how it is that you feel, both physical feeling in your body, and then perhaps any emotions that you associate with these physical feelings. And especially pay attention to any strong positive or negative reactions that you have to this topic of the five senses. Right? Remember as we move through that there are many others that are feeling similarly as you are. And remember too that your feelings about this topic or your awareness around this topic will hopefully change as we go through the worksheet, right? So allow for the space in which it could change. And here and then again at the end, make a little commitment to take what it is that you've learned here today about the five senses and carry it into your daily life and see how it is that it can help increase mindfulness in your daily life. So moving on to our exercise today, exploring the five senses. With this worksheet, we're going to use the five senses and our awareness of five senses as a means of developing greater awareness in general, right? We perceive the world around us by way of the five senses. We have touch, smell, taste, hearing, and sight. And what happens is when we take in this information, we quickly apply a conceptual label to that information, and then we follow that almost instantaneously with a judgment, right? So sound arises, for example. Sound arises and we take in that sound and we immediately label it as bird or car or noise. And at the very same time, we judge it and we give it the label of good or bad or pleasant or unpleasant. And all of those labels and that judging causes us to react. And we know from experience that sometimes we react mistakenly, right? Sometimes what we think we feel or see or hear or smell or taste is not what it actually is. And we have these very strong reactions that are based on mistaken perceptions. For example, if we see a rope or a stick lying in the grass, we can have a very strong physical reaction and gasp or jump back, right? Thinking that it might be a snake. More often in our daily lives, maybe, we see a person walking towards us on the street. And because they're still far away and we don't recognize them, and yet we see them, we give a description, we give a label, we act unfriendly towards them, or we ignore them. And it's only as that person walks closer to us that we notice, oh, that's someone I actually know, or it's my neighbor, or it's my friend, right? And so how might we have reacted differently if we understood that from the very start, or if we held back on our reaction until we were able to take in more information? So in this following exercise, we're going to use mindfulness of the five senses to become more aware of the ways in which we do this labeling and this judging right away, right? How does our mind color our perception of the world? So why bother? Well, through these exercises, we're striving to become less reactive to our environment. We want to take things in with a sense of curiosity, right, in place of judgment. Give a little more spaciousness between what it is that we see or hear or smell or taste or touch, right, before we come up with the label and come up with the description and the judgment. Because we know that when we're reactive, we cause ourselves and others pain. And so by becoming a little less reactive, by giving ourselves a little more time to take in the world in all of its truth and its reality, apart from our judgments, we'll eventually become happier and we'll live a life of greater ease. So we're going to begin with the following seated meditation. So if you're doing this meditation on your own, and we do recommend practicing it again and again on your own, set a timer for 3 minutes, 7 minutes, any time that you can commit to for your meditation. With this one here, you can just follow along. But we'll begin by finding a comfortable seat with your spine tall and neutral. Close your eyes or keep a soft gaze towards the ground in front of you. And then settle in by just breathing quietly in and out through your nose. And then once you're settled, our intention with this meditation is to develop greater awareness of sound. So we simply sit and open our minds to take in the sound all around us. The sound of my voice or the sound in the space around you. And we just notice what it is that we hear. Not necessarily looking for sound or seeking sound, but just remaining open to sound arising within our awareness. And is it even possible to notice sound without labeling sound, without giving it a name? There are no right or wrong answers here. The goal of the meditation is simply to explore. Explore and notice as sound arises, if you have a tendency to label it as good or bad, pleasant or unpleasant. And we just decide that we remain present with sound. Understanding that no sound is also a sound. Of course, each time in meditation, the mind may have a tendency to wander. And if we notice that the mind has wandered, we just come back to being present here with the ears open, aware of sound. And we go through that process as many times as we need to until the timer goes off or the meditation comes to a close. So right here, just about 3 more cycles of breath. Noticing sound and what the mind does to label sound, perhaps judge sound. And what may it feel like to simply just be present with sound. And then we'll slowly open our eyes and move on to the next part of the worksheet. So let's work through some questions now that we've done that little meditation on sound. And feel free to hit pause on this recording at any time if you need more time to fill in your answers or to contemplate what's going on in your mind. But quickly just jot down what your general experience was during the meditation. And then describe the experience of what it felt like to zone in on just one of the senses, in this case, sound. All right, were you able to really zero in on sound itself without smell or touch or sight, for example? And did you notice anything about sound that was new to you? And were you able to experience sound without labeling what the sound was or where it was coming from? Do you even think that this is possible, right? Could we take in sound as pure vibration without thinking that we know exactly what that sound is? And then similar, but a little bit different, were you able to notice sound without judging or labeling it as pleasant or unpleasant, good or bad? Were you able to just be with sound with a sense of neutrality around what it was that you were hearing? And do you think it's possible to be aware of sound without thinking about that sound? Where, for example, just through the body itself, in a complete present moment experience with sound, without thinking about sound. And again, there's no right or wrong answers here, just developing greater awareness of what happens in your mind. And at some point of the meditation, did you feel as though you were completely present in the moment? And if so, when was that? Do you think it's possible to create more space between noticing sound and then thinking about sound or labeling or describing or judging that sound, right? Is it even possible to take in sound and then wait a little bit before we say, oh, good noise, bad noise? And if it was possible, how might that skill be useful outside of your meditation? And then we've been talking about all these senses as what I notice, thinking about things from the perspective of ourselves. So if we just subtly take ourselves out of the equation and make a little shift there, um, is there a difference between I am hearing this sound versus, oh, a sound is arising in my awareness? Just a little subtle shift. And then how might you think that difference could be useful in creating a little more space between you, yourself, and the sound it is that you're hearing? Right? I am hearing sound. This noise is bothering me versus there's a noise and it's arising in my awareness. And then, I can decide with a little more spaciousness what it is that I want to do about that and how I might react. So after going through this worksheet with sound, not today, but on another day, you can try the same exercise with all of the senses, right? You could try the exercise with touch, for example, beginning with a meditation where we sense the sensation of your body against the floor or the chair, the cushion on which you're sitting. Work with the sensation of clothing against your skin, or we can feel wind or temperature against our skin or parts of the body that are resting on other parts of the body, right? We can do this meditation with sight. Sight is a tricky one because we take in most of the information of the world around us through sight. Our eyes are probably the sense that we rely on the most. So with our eyes open, we can begin just softly gazing towards the ground, thinking about just colors and form, general form and light. And then as we get better at watching sight, noticing sight, we can slowly lift our gaze and take in more of the space around us, right? Just noticing what is arising in my view right here and right now. And you might find that working with one of the senses is easier for you than working with others, right? So experiment with the different senses, smell, taste. Experiment as you're eating your meals, perhaps. How is it that you taste each bite, right? How do you label and describe and judge each bite as it comes in? So just another way in which we can work with the five senses. So to review, the five senses, when we really explore how it is that they're in relationship with the world around us, they're not necessarily giving us an experience of ultimate reality. Right? At best, our senses give us a subjective idea of how it is that our past experiences have formed an opinion of what it is that we see or smell or hear or taste and feel. Right? And we'll never fully be free from this influence of past experiences over our opinion and our view of how we see the world. Right? Every single thing, though, has the potential to be both good or bad, or scary or funny, or frustrating and gratifying or awe-inspiring, right? A noise to you might be very annoying, but that same noise to someone else could be pleasant, right? For example, the crying of a child, right? Somebody else might find it annoying and somebody else might find it lovely because it's their child or a child that they really truly care for. So everything depends upon our minds, and it also depends on our minds in that one moment. We've had experiences where a particular sound doesn't bother us at all, but then if our mood changes, that same sound becomes extremely frustrating, right? So by deepening our awareness of how it is that perception works, we can eventually work on less of naming what it is that we experience, right? Create more space between just the visceral experience of sound, for example, and then our judgment and our labeling of that sound. Because if we can work towards an experience that's absent of the story behind us, we will be better able to realize contentment and peace and equanimity. With mindfulness, we'll be able to choose our reaction to sound versus habitually reacting based on what might be a mistake about what it is that we think we hear.